see. We're checking to see if we're live everywhere we're supposed to be.
It says we're live on X.
X usually goes through easily. YouTube is the one I'm concerned about. 'Cause that
We're
one
live on
didn't.
YouTube.
We are live on YouTube.
Believe so.
It's not popping up for me, so I'm just trying to make sure.
Yep, there we are.
Okay. Welcome in, everybody, to the Bat Flip Podcast. Special episode. I'm David. That's Matt. We're missing Damien, but we're doing it early because Matt and I have later obligations tonight. So we can at least have some discussion instead of just talking about Damien talking about the Garrett Crochet move by himself. But Matt, today, Jeff Passan drops the breaking tweet for Garrett Crochet. He gets moved to the Red Sox, and I would say this is kind of a direct move in response to the Max Fried signing by the Yankees, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. This is a move that the Red Sox obviously were looking for left-handed pitching. It's not necessarily just in the way that they're trying to top the Yankees, which is something the Red Sox always try to do, and the Yankees try to top the Red Sox all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is a reaction to the fact that they had a lot of interest in Max Fried too. We're trying to get him. They offered him 7 years and $190 million, I believe is what was reported. And they lost out on that, so they pivoted very quickly. The Red Sox. This actually, honestly, makes a little bit more sense to me for the Red Sox than the Max Fried contract would have, because they have a really deep farm system right now, and they can afford to be able to go trade some of that depth away to get a Garrett Crochet who's still pretty cost controlled for at least a couple more years. Um, and that they were able to use that to their advantage, and now they've got a guy who, I mean, if Garrett Crochet can do what he did in 2024 repeatedly, I mean, this guy was th- close to the as quality as what like Chris Sale and Tariq Skubal did, just
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to his pitches. His ERA was like a 3.5 just because the White Sox defense is absolutely abysmal. And the team is abysmal. So, but Garrett Crochet is a very very good pickup for the White Sox for sure. I mean, for the Red Sox for sure.
I did a lot of research on Garrett Crochet because there for a while the Cubs were connected to him. We also had seen the Phillies had been in there, Reds had been in there, Brewers had been talking about Garrett Crochet as well. A lot of rumors surrounding this move. When you're a team as bad as the White Sox, trading your best player, even if he's got 2 years of control, is a good move because you need to restock. And then when you look at the White Sox, next 2 years, it's not going to be a particularly good time for these White Sox fans. And but you've also got a guy in Garrett Crochet who has never thrown more than 65 innings before last year, right? And for pitchers, that's extremely scary. You have so many durability questions with a guy like Garrett Crochet. And while I think I was fully on board with making the move. This return looks like the return for a guy who is not as talented as Garrett Crochet is, but it is the type of return for a guy who has as many question marks as Garrett Crochet has. And I think that's kind of the perfect balance between an overpay, right? A big time prospect overpay versus if you're moving a bona fide ace who's done this years and years and years in a row, uh, you're going to get a lot more. The Red Sox would have put those three top 20 prospects on the table, I think. But um, as it stands, this is a good move for Garrett Crochet by the Red Sox. It's a strong offer, but I don't think it was as crazy as I thought it was going to be when we saw how many teams were actually involved for Garrett Crochet, because everybody's looking for elite starting pitching. And even if you're risking, that guy not being an ace for long, or maybe getting innings limited or getting hurt potentially because he throws so hard, um, there's a lot of risk involved, but that's baked into the price here. And so I do want to go over that. The White Sox will acquire catcher Kyle Teal. He was their first round pick last year. So like the year before last, not 2024, 2023 first round pick. Braden Montgomery, their first round 2024 pick. And then infielder Chase Meadroth and right-handed pitcher Winkelman Gonzalez. It's Wilkelman, right?
Wickelman.
Wilkelman. It's one of
Wickelman.
those.
Yeah, something like that.
For me, the big prize here is Braden Montgomery. I Kyle Teel is good, but they have Edgar Cuero as well, a really young catcher up at the majors, and Kyle Teal's got a little bit of a question mark. He's going to be the higher rated prospect, but I think the guy that might, we'll say, haunt the Red Sox. It's not going to be haunting. I think I'd rather have Garrett Crochet than any of these four guys, but the guy that might really hit for the White Sox is Braden Montgomery. We talked to Greg Zumack about him at the during the draft process last year, and he was effusive in his praise for great Braden Montgomery. He's coming off an injury, but that guy has a monster ceiling, and the White Sox desperately need prospects like that who have a long
Yeah.
timeline, who can take a year or two in the minors. You'll build out that. Once he we had the Rule 5 draft today, so once he becomes Rule 5 eligible, then you can call him up, jump him straight onto the roster on opening day that next season. He has 2 or 3 years in the minors to season, but he's got so much talent that he might force his way up earlier, and that might narrow your window. And Kyle Teal's probably major league ready middle of next year, but Braden Montgomery is the guy that would excite me as a White Sox fan if I were thinking about it from there. This is like a guy who should have gone in the top 5 of last year's draft that fell because of the injury to
Yeah.
12, and now he's been traded to your team. That's pretty good. And now you've got 2 of the top 5 picks, top 5 talented players
Right.
from that draft last year. So pretty good move for the White Sox, at least on that front.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the White Sox got a fantastic return here. To be honest, I mean, I think Kyle Till is he's a consensus top 50 prospect in baseball.
Yeah.
Very very good catching prospect, and you talk about Edgar Cuero being there, but you can both of these guys have some form of defensive questions,
Mm-hmm.
and they're both offense first guys, and I think that both of them have performed pretty well at the upper minors. You take two shots on it, and you just grab talent. I
Yeah.
mean, at a certain point, when the White Sox in 2 or 3 years, if they want to start trying to contend again, or whenever it may be, they can trade one and pick up an arm that's like a Garrett Crochet in 3 years when Garrett Crochet is going to be a free agent. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can. It's definitely a good move there, and like you mentioned, I think Braden Montgomery is not getting enough attention in this deal,
Yeah.
because I mean this guy was like a top 5 prospect for the draft last year before the injury, which was not a injury you really worry about long term. It was just I think he broke his ankle in a game in the NCAA tournament in the
Mm-hmm.
regionals or super regionals or something. So I think this guy's got all the talent in the world. He was actually a two-way player at Stanford as a freshman in college. I mean, this guy is awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that he's probably around a top 100 prospect already. When the lists come out for next year, I know he didn't play at all this year, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to judge him. I think he's forgotten about a little bit because of that. But those two guys are a very good return, and then the depth here isn't bad. I mean, Chase Maydroth is a pretty solid depth piece. Had unbelievable plate discipline numbers at AAA last year. We're talking about a guy who had an 18% walk rate and a
Mm-hmm.
12% strikeout rate at AAA.
Yeah.
440 on base percentage. I mean, he was fantastic there, and he can play all the infield spots. He can play second, short, third. No, not the best fielder in the world, but I mean, this guy, is he's versatile and he can get on base. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
good player. That's a guy that could probably be up. I would guess he's probably up this year for them because, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you look at the plate discipline number. What else does he have to prove at AAA? He just played 122 games there last year and put up these numbers. I mean, it's time for him to start at the big leagues. And then Wickelman Gonzalez is kind of interesting. Probably a relief arm that
Mm-hmm.
they could have. Maybe develop. We'll see. He did start a lot of games in Double A this year, but he's probably more of a reliever down the line. But I actually really like this return for the White Sox. I think they got some good pieces. They got some quality and some depth. They got four
Mm-hmm.
pieces who have major league potential in this deal, and they got the quality in Teal and probably Braden Montgomery too, who's kind of a lottery
Mm-hmm.
ticket. So I really like this deal from them, and I like it for the Red Sox too because they traded from strength, and their strength is their farm system, and they brought in a guy who's a potential ace. For them, and we'll see. I think the biggest question mark is just going to be: can Garrett Crochet stay healthy? long
Mhm.
term. Can he stay healthy these next 2 to 3 years that this trade will be judged on? Because if he does, then I think there's a pretty good chance that this is like a dead even trade, or the Red Sox win this trade. And
Mhm.
if he doesn't, then you might be looking at this trade has disaster potential because there's
Mhm.
a chance that Garrett Crochet gets injured again. And with his history, I mean, it's a higher than normal chance for a pitcher. I mean, obviously, all pitchers have pretty high chance of getting injured, but this is a higher than normal chance, in my opinion. And you've got a guy in Braden Montgomery who could potentially be like a superstar, and you've got a guy in Kyle Till who could potentially be like an all-star caliber catcher.
Mhm.
So, this could end up having disaster potential. But at the same time, I think the most likely scenario is that Garrett Crochet stays relatively healthy, pitches pretty well for the Red Sox, and the White Sox get a one really good major league piece out of these four. And I think that's a pretty fair trade, if you ask me. I mean, especially when you
Yeah.
consider the 6 years that they'll get of control with whoever ends up being the guy from this trade for the White Sox. So, I thought this was very very well done by both sides, and I don't know that I don't know that the White Sox could have gotten too much more just because of the injury risk
Mhm.
with Crochet and also the extension thing too. That's another
Yeah.
thing that hadn't really been pointed out that much. That he's kind of said, "Hey, if you want me to pitch for you, you need to sign me to an extension." So I think that might have limited some teams from wanting to do that as well.
Right. That might have been some of the hang up in talks. I do want to close out by doing just a little bit of a I'll call it a deep dive, but let's talk about Garrett Crochet's like actual
Yeah,
tangible numbers a little bit because I think they're obscene to the point that I don't think people realize just how good Garrett Crochet was last year. And I didn't prepare as good as I should have. I tweeted about it a couple of weeks ago or like last week when this kind of first started dropping. But Crochet before Garrett Crochet started getting innings limited last year, he threw until June 30th, I believe was the proper log because they started just pulling him in the third and fourth inning of games after June 30th. June 30th, he goes 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, 2 runs against Colorado. From then on, he never pitched past the fourth inning in a game last season. So that's a severe innings limit to where they had basically just shut him down and were just starting him to have somebody eat innings in the season, keep him fresh, etc. In those 18 starts, he had 101 innings pitched, which is over a 5 inning average. It's like 5 and 2/3 average, which is you're going to hear Crochet get called like a five and dive guy. I'm sure you're going to get some concern that it doesn't have durability in the game. He was very durable. He was going 5, 6, 7 every single time out
yeah,
before he got innings limited last year. 141 strikeouts and 20 walks in that stretch, which amounts to, I have to hit the advanced button here, amounts to a 35% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate.
yeah,
That is Jacob deGrom prime level
yeah. It's elite.
results. That's elite on both ends. The ERA specifically, I have to go back to standard. The ERA specifically was, it's
He had a 3.58.
yeah, it's like 3.5 ERA,
Yep.
but it was like a 2.2 FIP,
Yeah, he had a two.
right?
He had a
Like
269 fit, but he had a
right.
238 x fit. So,
His results in this stretch of him
oh, in that stretch,
starting
yeah, yeah. Sorry.
were like I think it was 3.02 ERA and a 2.22 FIP. And
Yeah,
then once so after that, the results tapered off when he was only pitching 4 starts a game. And I think that does something to you when you're only prepared to go out there and throw 3 or 4 innings, even though you can do more. I'm willing to bet that impacts his performance slightly. So I'm willing to go. That stuff is that's all a separate thing because they
yeah,
were innings limiting him, and they were so bad. There was just a lot of external factors going on. So my thought is, what if you believe these 18 starts from the beginning of last year for Garrett Crochet? You are trading for one of the best pitchers in
yeah,
baseball right now. And to do that without touching your top 3 prospects, that is excellent work by Craig Breslow. Excellent work.
yeah,
Even if Braden Montgomery does break out, and I think he's the
yeah,
guy that I'm concerned about breaking out, even if Braden Montgomery breaks out, you have 2 outfielders ahead of him in your team right now. So I feel really, really good about this being a huge win for the Red Sox as they are preparing to, have an arms race in the AL East with
Yep.
Baltimore's crop of really good players, with the Yankees now shelling out $200 million for Max Fried. The Yankees aren't going to be done. The Orioles haven't even spent yet. We thought they were going to. They haven't.
Yeah.
The Red Sox have to make this move, and they have to continue to make moves here. But this move specifically, it might be the single most impactful AL East move because Juan Soto didn't choose to move back into the AL East.
Right.
That this might be it. Now that requires these 18 starts to be who Garrett Crochet
Yeah.
is, but I like that.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned that I do think that those 18 starts are who he is. I mean, it just his stuff is out of this world. There's a reason he was such a high draft pick, despite not having a huge amount of volume on his resume at Tennessee. I mean, this guy's got just incredible stuff. I mean, his average fastball velocity from the left side was over 97 miles per hour. Has a wipeout slider. I mean,
Mhm.
he really. I mean, there are a lot of parallels between him and another pitcher that got traded from the White Sox to the Red Sox. That was a lefty. I mean, there's a lot of Chris Sale in Garrett Crochet's game. So
Mhm.
now Garrett Crochet does not have the track record of durability that Chris Sale had when he went with the same teams. So I mean that's really the big difference between the two,
Mhm.
but it's a very similar style of pitcher, very similar stuff. And I think that that's a big time get. And I mean, you look at his baseball savant page. It is
Mhm.
all red, man. It is red all the way. Everything about him. He is an elite caliber pitcher if he stays healthy, and that's the question.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is can Crochet stay healthy? We have zero indication that a pitcher has taken this kind of leap from no real experience starting, even in college, not a like 150 innings workload type of guy. Doesn't matter, right? But John Morosi is tweeting out that the Red Sox are still trying for
Yeah,
a
and
Mariners starter as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Mike Rodriguez is reporting that the Mariners are shopping Luis Castillo.
Yeah, I believe that. I think if there's a Mariners starter that moves, it would be Luis Castillo. Rumors swirling today as we kind of pull away from this and wrap it up. Kyle Tucker might get moved. That one's real interesting. Um, the Rule 5 draft went. We saw, I think, 15 teams take players, and the Rule 5 draft is usually not a spot where you get a lot of superstars and stuff, but you can wind up getting
Oh
some
yeah.
really impactful players from there. The Braves took 2 players, which that's
Hmm.
2 guys on your 25-man or 26-man roster right there.
Yeah.
So, um, Cubs took somebody, basically a left-handed third baseman that kind of is just a bench guy.
Yeah.
It avoids having to go to free agency for some of these guys. And I'll tell you, if 15 teams took a player, 5 might last the whole year. You have to keep him on your 26-man roster for the whole season unless they get injured. So you'll see some returns for sure. They might even get returned before the season starts here. But Rule 5 drafted today. Uh,
Yeah.
Tucker news, but really the Crochet thing was the thing that came to a head
Yeah.
this morning, and that's I think that kind of concludes the winter meetings, doesn't it?
I believe so. I think they might. Do they end? Yeah, the Rule 5 draft is usually the end of the winter meetings. So,
Yeah.
and just kind of a reminder to everybody with the winter meetings, you always have some big deals that go down. And of course, this week we've had some big deals go down. But a lot of what happens at the winter meetings is these GMs and owners and agents and free agents and everybody is they're laying the groundwork for deals to happen. And I
Hmm.
think that's where like a lot of teams have been like you start hearing all these talks about Kyle Tucker, Luis Castillo. We've heard Seiya Suzuki
Hmm.
talk. We've heard all this talk over the last few days, and a lot of that is because this is when teams get together and start discussing these types of things, and these things get brought up, and they're just ideas right now. They haven't happened, so they might not
Hmm.
happen. But there's a lot more that goes on here, and a lot more groundwork that gets laid than literally just a
Yep.
few moves happen and then it's over. Like there could be a stream up for the next week or two of moves that come out of the winter meetings that get finalized.
Yep. You had Bregman talk as well.
Yeah, Bragman talked
He
today.
was maybe he's maybe
Yep.
leaning towards signing soon. I would
Yeah,
say it's probably not going to happen yet because I think that's
right.
intertwined with the Kyle Tucker stuff. Is the Astros are telling, I think Bregman's Boris, they're telling
Yeah,
Boris, look, we're up our offer, but we got to move off of
we got to get rid of
some
Tucker.
salary
Yeah,
first or something like that. But if the returns that we were seeing, it's Luis Heel from the Yankees or Paredes from the Cubs. Well, if Paredes moves over, they don't need to sign a third baseman anymore. So if the Astros are in an interesting spot where they're kind of controlling this, and I think they might have locked up the very end of this winter
yeah,
meetings. Christian Walker was another one that was getting talked about
yeah.
today. Is in I think yesterday.
Yeah, Corbin Burns has been getting talked about some today. I think
Yep.
I saw something where he was looking with, there's some rumors about him and the Giants, maybe,
Mhm.
which would be interesting.
Buster, go
So
get him,
yeah,
Buster.
yeah,
Yeah, I think Corbin's market is going to continue to languish. Languish is maybe a little more negative than I want to say. It's going to take a while to get Corbin Burns going because I think somebody's got to really get believing in him. Max Fried, you had the run prevention stuff and then the Yankees missing on Juan Soto and the Red Sox and Yankees bidding against each other to get that to go up. I don't think Corbin Burns is going to have that kind of bidding war for him. I think he's going to struggle to find a market above the Freed deal, and that might be something that holds that deal back from going.
yeah,
But if it starts to decline, I think you'll see some of these teams as they start. We'll see some trades. We might see some salary shift around, and then some teams might jump in that weren't in this week. But yeah, I think Burns might take longer. But we keep hearing heat from various teams. I've heard nothing about like Sean Manaea. I think today was the first time I saw a Nick Pivetta rumor since like that first week when he was about to accept the qualifying offer.
yeah. I haven't heard anything about either one of those guys either. So there's gonna be a lot of a lot of moves that still happen. I mean, obviously there's a lot of teams that haven't done anything yet too. To contenders. I mean, we're gonna see some moves here soon. I would
Mhm.
assume from a lot of these teams like the Orioles. I think we'll see moves from them soon. The
Yep.
Braves, the Cubs.
Mhm.
You're gonna see moves from obviously last night we finally saw moves from the Rangers.
Yep. Rangers finally
I
woke
think
up.
I think maybe the Royals look at making some moves.
I'm
Coming
worried
off of
that
their
I'm worried the Royals are currently priced out of anything. I think
probably,
they've
but they can
they've
make
extended themselves,
yeah
but
they
they're gonna
can
have to wait.
yeah I guess they've they did make the big India trade,
Yeah.
but maybe more trades for them. I mean,
Guardians
and
Guardians need a
guard
second baseman now, but
they
I'm sure
do.
y'all talked about Bazana.
We didn't really talk about it too much, but
Yeah.
it's likely that Pisano will be the starting second baseman there, and then they shouldn't get a
Hmm.
second baseman to block him. I mean, maybe you go grab a veteran that
Or
maybe is more of a utility guy that can come in, and if Pisano ends up just not being ready and comes up and struggles or something, you could slide
yeah.
in there, and if not, he could be a utility guy, somebody I don't know, like an Ahmed Rosario type guy, which
bring home
funny
bring
enough, yeah,
home
bring him
the
home.
yep.
But
I Yeah, the Guardians, I think they could get a guy who could play both
or
second
or
and
Jose
short.
or Jose Iglesias might be a
That would
good.
be that would be
Yeah,
a
I mean,
perfect one. Yeah.
there's a few of those guys out there that I think would be perfect. That are just veteran utility guys who could
Mhm.
fill in if Bazzano's not ready, and Bazzano will be ready at some point this year if he's not a bust. I mean, he is he was the most big league ready player in the
Mhm.
draft, I think, aside from maybe one of the pitchers. Um,
Right.
so the most position player wise, he was the most big league ready, I think. So I definitely am on board with that, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm looking forward to some of these upcoming moves and seeing what teams do and seeing where things stack out here in the next month or two.
Last thought, and it's based off of our Guardians talk there, and I didn't get to throw my hat in the ring last night on the Guardians, but it's worth noting. Any thought in your mind that the White Sox might go and take Teal or Cuero and then do what the Guardians did with Spencer Horwitz and ship him out for more prospects to try and further down that or target someone else. There is an
Um,
overlap, but you also said right, stack up a couple of really good hitters, maybe move one to first base, DH one, whatever, have two good
yeah,
catchers, something. There's I guess there's a lot of options, but what do you think
Y-
about the
yeah,
Horwitzing of it?
yeah. The Horowitz thing, we actually didn't talk about that because it happened late last night. We talked a lot about how Horowitz was going to be a good fit for the Guardians, and then
And they
then they
moved him
trade him.
off,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I kind of doubt it just because of the position the White Sox are in. They don't really have needs that they need to address something. They need to address just their general talent level in their farm. And
Mhm.
I think that having Kyle Till and Edgar Quero is addressing that right now. Um, I don't. I wouldn't be. I mean, crazier things have happened. I mean,
Yeah.
it is weird to have two upper minors catchers like that you just acquired in the last year, that are both not. Neither one of them are just falling apart or struggling or anything really. I mean, I know that Teal didn't quite have the offensive season he was hoping for, but he was still fine, especially for a catcher.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting thought. I haven't really thought about that too much, but I think that eventually one of them will get flipped. I just don't know if the White Sox have any rush to do it now.
Mhm. Yeah, the thought that I've seen, and it's a Greg Zumac idea that had been floated, was for the Cubs to send one of the outfielders for Teal because the Cubs are lacking in catcher, but that had been around the time before Carson Kelly has reportedly signed. Now that deal still hasn't been finalized either. I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm thinking they were waiting to draft somebody in the Rule 5. They might have to release somebody in order to get Kelly on board, but um, the Cubs might feel comfortable with the catcher thing and may not worry about that, especially if they're going to package up prospects for another player. So at least that was just something I had seen before, and it was back when Teal was a Red Sox, and now that he's White Sox, and we've seen a prospect get offloaded from more prospects in the same day. It certainly leads you to think that's something that could happen, but I think you'd have to have big prospects. Like Horowitz is kind of he's been moved a couple times now.
Yeah.
And that's I'd say that's a little bit of a red flag. The other guy who's been moved a lot that moved this offseason is Joey Weimer. At this point,
Yeah.
like how good is he if every team is like, yeah, he's still pretty good, and then they
Yeah.
trade him immediately?
The weird thing to me with Horowitz is that he played a pretty good bit in the big leagues this year and was pretty good. And they're
Yeah.
moving on from him. Like, Joey Weimer is this guy who's like this is elite
Hmm.
talent, like power speed combo that just hasn't put it together and never has put it together in the big leagues. He's a little bit Joe Adelish. Like he's
Hmm.
just this, but if the Angels actually traded Joe Adell, which they should have done when he was a prospect, but
Yeah.
um, the thing with Horowitz is that I think Horowitz's thing is I don't know how teams feel about his overall value being a first base only guy that doesn't have elite power.
Hmm.
And a little bit in the way that people are not as high on Nolan Shanuel from the Angels.
Yeah.
And just that this is like a really good on base guy who just doesn't really have high end power.
Hmm.
He has okay power, but it's not high end power, and he's kind of a first base only. I know he played second some this year, but he's really more of a first baseman. So it's one of those things where it's just kind of I think teams just don't value that as highly, and that piece can get moved pretty easy.
I wonder if there's a niche that is somewhat underrated in that, a higher contact first base type, where Yandy Diaz kind of fits as my thought as to a mold there, where
Yeah.
Yandy's made a career out of being a guy who
Oh
hits the
yeah.
ball on the ground, sub 20 homers, but he gets on
Yeah.
base so much it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
know,
you got to remember with Yandy Diaz too that he had the year that he was really really good. He hit the ball in the air a little bit more. I mean
yeah,
he had a good power year in I guess it was what 2023.
it's
I mean
23. Yeah.
yeah
But
and
his numbers are always good.
yeah
He's carved
yeah
out a career though,
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah, for
It's
sure. I mean, Luis Arias too. I mean,
mhm.
he's really a first base only DH type that doesn't hit for any power, and
Nate Lowe
I think he's
maybe.
overrated. But Nate Lowe maybe. Yeah, I mean Nate Lowe's
He doesn't
his
really hit for
track.
power.
Yeah, his track record might not be quite as long as those other two guys, but
Uh,
he's in that kind of realm there.
I'm just trying to think of guy like Lourdes Gurriel,
Yeah,
these are lower value players, but they have long careers.
yeah.
I
Oh
think
yeah, for
Horwitz will
sure.
have a long
That's
career
I agree 100%.
as an impactful major leaguer, but
Right.
I don't think he'll ever get considered in that
Yeah.
upper echelon
He's
of Freddie Freeman's of first
Right.
base.
He's very, very, very
Yeah.
limited ceiling player.
Right. It's worth noting that the ceiling of those those Red Sox players that moved today, though, those got some. I think Braden
Yeah. Oh
Montgomery's
yeah.
of all the trade talk that we've had both yesterday and today. I think Braden Montgomery is the best player that moved. I'm gonna stick on that until Braden Montgomery plays professional baseball and proves me wrong. But
Yeah.
I I really like that one for the White Sox. That is the one that makes me think, man, they might have found something here, and being able to grab that in a Crochet trade is a really smart move. Um, but that's, I mean, that's my final thought. Basically, is we've had a bunch of these trades. This winter meetings has been really action packed. I'm really glad the winter meetings is back, man. This has been so missing for Major League Baseball, where we haven't not seen winter meetings with big deals signed and like exciting moments and
Yeah.
people running through the lobby, and all of a sudden you've got like sightings of different players and different agents, and it's so good. It's refreshing for Major League Baseball. I mean, someone said, "Oh, I shook Basan's hand in the lobby," and 20 seconds later he tweeted out a breaking
Oh, that's
news
awesome.
tweet. Like that's super cool, and it's stuff like that just makes baseball really fun.
Yeah.
So it's good that winter meetings is back. I'm happy about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, very good. So I guess we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah.
We got we'll be back. I guess we'll be back on Monday. We have some smaller moves to to break down. Maybe a little bit more general talk about the direction of the off season. But we're doing one every 2 weeks, and Monday will be 2 weeks since our last full episode. So check us out then.
Even though
And
we've had a lot
Even
of
though we've
episodes
had a lot
before
of
that.
episodes since then. And we're gonna have check out our social medias, X, and Instagram and
Mhm.
TikTok. We're new on TikTok. We're
We
got
decided to join right as it's gonna go down probably, but
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of doubt that actually happens, but you never know.
you never know.
But yeah, we're on TikTok now, so follow us there. So yeah, appreciate y'all for tuning in. So we'll talk to you sometime next week here.
Yep. Have a good one.
All
That
right.
was that was fun. That was perfect. I need
Yeah.
to go make dinner.
Yeah. Go for it, man.